Have we given you enough time to think about a great Bible teacher?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm ready. I got
Okay.
it. Actually I got three, but I'm gonna talk about two.
Okay. One of them doesn't have to be me, so it's like you can
Okay.
go ahead and just skip that one.
All right. Well, I knew that would embarrass you if I talked about you, so
Right.
I didn't want to embarrass you.
All right. Well,
And I'm not gonna say I am either. So just so you know, equal treatment.
That's good.
Well, Rick, in all humility, I am the
Sometimes I just amaze myself.
Oh man.
I'll say, I don't know if you're going to write that down, but I'm going to write it down. That was great. I hope you recognize good teaching when you hear it.
That's right. That's right. I hope y'all are taking screenshots of this.
All right. All right. Let me get composed here just a little bit.
All right.
Welcome to Great Bible Teacher Interviews. Hello, I'm Rick Jordan, President of Great Bible Teachers. As you can tell from the intro, today's guest and I have known each other a long time, and we play well together. Each week I have the opportunity to interview a biblical scholar, an author, or a practitioner. We talk about the Bible, biblical interpretation, or spiritual formation. Today I'm very pleased to have Bo Prosser as our interviewee. Bo has a couple of degrees from Southern Seminary and then a doctorate from NC State University in education. He's a frequent consultant and coach. He does work for businesses as well as churches, but primarily I believe his work is with churches. That's how I've come to know him. He worked for many years, continues to work with the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, headquartered in Decatur, Georgia. And his focus has been on helping the churches to be more of what God has called them to be and to do. So today we will focus on teachers and teaching and some very practical kind of nuts and bolts with good philosophy as well behind our teaching. Here's Bo. Welcome, Bo, to Great Bible Teachers. We begin each session with asking the interviewee about their own experience with a great Bible teacher. So what can you share with us about who has been a great Bible teacher in your life?
Well, thank you, Rick. It's a joy to be with you. And I have two great Bible teachers in my mind. The first is Jack Nash. Jack was mentor and hero to me. He just had a way of bringing your brain into the room and helping you settle and calm yourself. And then he just was an amazing teacher in helping people discuss differing voices and thoughts, helping people interact and accept one another. He was just masterful. And the first time I sat in a workshop with him, I had to keep my hand up like this to keep my jaw from hitting the floor. It was just so amazing. And then my second great Bible teacher is Mansell Ezell. Mansell for many years was the director of the church media library department at the Sunday School Board in Nashville. And upon leaving there, became a docent in several of the museums around Nashville. And he just first amazed me using multimedia. The first time I sat with Mansell, he had about 4 screens going in a room, and he was flawless as he moved from one screen to the next and one idea to the next. He was just flawless And he just knew how to use multimedia in a way that none of us had ever thought about. You know, we had the old overhead projector with the film you tried to get to stay on the screen on the deck so you could project it. And Mansell would always still to this day will find a fine point of something that you never thought about, that you never knew existed, but he would just find that one little intricate delicacy that you just wanted to savor when he gave it to you. And between Jack Nash drawing me in and Mansell amazing me with that little morsel of amazing, those two men were just have been fabulous influences in my life.
Wow, that's great. And then they have shaped the way you teach, I'm sure, as well. I mean, that's just
They
obvious.
have. I've tried to emulate them and many others. We don't have time for my list today, but those two, when you ask the question, they popped immediately into my head.
Yeah.
Bob Fulbright was another wonderful Bible teacher and great friend. I miss him. I really miss him. But he was just another amazing Bible teacher. And several women in my youth ministry days when I was growing up that also gave me freedom to talk and express. And so I've been blessed with a rich line of Bible teachers in my life. So I'm grateful for that.
When you've gone on in your ministry career to be known as a teacher as well, and a teacher of teachers, and I mean, you've been a practitioner as well. You even in your I know right now you've been serving as the interim pastor and also leading a Bible study and using Zoom and Facebook Live, and so you're continuing to progress and learn and be on the edge of education. And so I've always appreciated that about you, and that's one reason I wanted to invite you to share with us, because we can learn a lot about the Bible from Bible scholars. We can learn a lot about theology from theologians. We also need to learn a lot about just the practice from people who are actually practicing. And so that's one reason I'm excited to have you here. And you're going to share with us about stages of adult learning and spiritual formation. So I'll give you just a second to set up your share screen, and we'll follow along.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate the affirmation, and I would return the compliment. You too, Rick, are one of those teachers of teachers, and you and I have been great friends and shared time together through the years. So it's great. I like the saying, the father said to his son, "You may not ever amount to a hill of beans, just hang around people who do." And you are one of those people in my life, Rick, and I'm grateful for our friendship.
Well, thank you, Bo. Thank you.
There are 4 distinct learning styles that I work from. This comes from the research of David Kolb, and also was emphasized through Maria Harris and a lot of her work. And these two folks together have kind of helped me formulate my own taxonomy, I guess you could call that. But I believe there are 4 distinct ways that adults learn. And the first of those ways is there are a group called doers. Doers love to practice. Doers love the immediate. They love show and tell. So if you can come with a demonstration or an image, the doers are going to be with you from the start. because that gives them something to do and interact with as they listen and learn together. The second group are feelers. Feelers love to hear you say the word, "Now let's share together." That's a cue for a feeler to get on board and to get involved and to really work into the here and now. So doers and feelers really treasure the immediate. So the 23rd Psalm, as we look at the 23rd Psalm, the truth of the passage is fear not. And so if I'm teaching the 23rd Psalm and I'm working with fear not, I'm going to ask doers, when is a time they have felt fear? And they're going to talk about the immediacy of fear, and the feelers are going to hang on every word because there's a story that's coming. And so those two, if I can grab them quickly, they will set the tone for the learning experience. Then there are reflectors. Reflectors love to do analysis and love to do research. If I were teaching the 23rd Psalm and really wanted to engage a reflector, I would ask one of them to bring a report on the background of the 23rd Psalm in Scripture, where those words came from, what influenced it, why did David write it. I would have to be careful, though, to say to a reflector, now, I only want 2 paragraphs. Otherwise, they would write me an 18-page master's thesis on the 23rd Psalm, which I wouldn't have time to share in a Sunday school class, nor would I necessarily be interested in 18 pages of research. But reflectors love to learn and they love to dig deep. So as a teacher, I have to dig deep to find something that will also pull their brain. And sometimes I do that by bringing quotes, because reflectors love to ponder. And they will take something that's said in the learning event and they will noodle on that. My technical word for today is noodle. Reflectors will noodle on that truth for weeks, trying to really hone in on what it was that we were trying to talk about on that day. And then there are thinkers. Thinkers love an outline. So if you say, today I'm going to share with you 3 points. Point number 1 is, a thinker is going to love to do that because they know an outline is coming and that pulls them in. Thinkers love a challenge and they love problem solving. So puzzles and word search kinds of experiential learning for thinkers would be a good way to grab them and bring them into the room. Doers would also love puzzles because it gives them something to do. And feelers love puzzles because while they are doing the puzzle, they're having fun with the group that they're working with, or however that works. So if I can get 3 out of 4 of the learners to participate with me, I feel like I've done a good job. And then somewhere in there, I'm going to throw in a quote from someone that a reflector can go do further research on, or a website, or something that stirs the intellect and will stay with a reflector. So as I come to do teaching and learning, that's what I'm trying to do in the teaching event. And if you'll notice what I did in the last 5 minutes is I had show and tell for a doer on this slide. They can see the slide and interact with it, and it's immediate. I told a story, and really used the key word for feelers, which is share. I gave reflectors 2 quotes, and then I shared with thinkers a way to teach the 23rd Psalm in a way that could solve the problem of fear for them.
Mm.
So I work off of this grid when I'm teaching. I work off of this grid when I'm preaching, and try to have something for someone, for everyone, in every interaction, teaching, preaching interaction that I do.
Mm. Well, let me ask you, bro. So, is your assumption is then in a group of, say, at least 4 people, maybe 8 people to a congregation, you're going to have representation of all of these different styles.
Absolutely. And the reason that I know that is, for the most part, none of us are purely one of these things.
Mm-hmm.
We process in multiple ways. So I like to do problem solving. I personally don't like puzzles, but I like to do problem solving. So if the question to me as a learner was, when do you think David might have felt fear? What might have motivated him to speak about fear in the 23rd Psalm? That's a problem for me to think over. And if it really pulls me, I'm going to ponder it for a couple of days or maybe a couple of weeks, because I do like to do analysis and research. And one of my favorite Bible verses is, Mary pondered all of these things in her heart.
Yeah.
So I do noodle a bit, and so I'm not motivated primarily by research and analysis, but I like to do that. And I love to sit and tell stories and share laughter with folks. So the feeler in me is very evident, and the doer, I like to do. So one of the things as a doer, the way I process is I write it down. And it is not uncommon for me to sit and write with pen and paper. And I know that is just so 1950, but that's how I process, is with pen and paper. So I write it down, and that gives me something to do. I was doing a training several years ago on dealing with anger, and I put together a framework of 8 different ways we deal with anger, and I labeled each of those ways as an animal. And there was a young man about midway of the room, and he was writing fiercely as I was talking. And I was going through this grid. I was using doers, feelers, the whole thing. And he was just fiercely writing. And I thought, man, I am on fire today. This guy is loving what I'm saying. And I was getting energy from what he was doing. And it was just great interaction. We took a break, and I went back to where he was just to, kind of take a peek at what he'd been relating to. He'd been drawing pictures of all the animals that I was talking about. He had not written a single note, but he has some great art on his paper. So you never know how people are processing. You never know how people are learning, but
Sometimes maybe it's better not to know. It's
yeah, absolutely.
Just live with your projection.
Absolutely. But primarily, I know that there's a little bit of each of these in most all of us. Mm-hmm. Reflectors are the least populated of the group. Generally, about 3% of any population will be reflectors. So I know I've got to bring something even to 3% of the class And in some churches, that number is higher because there are people who really want to be Bible students, and they're going to do their research. They're going to ponder on things that have been said. And I want everybody to go away feeling that they've been prepared for and cared for in the class structure.
So what do you do with, I mean, I understand that we've got these different learning styles. You understand that, but the student themselves may not understand that and may sometimes even revolt that you're asking them to do something that for another person is going to be very meaningful. But for them, I remember one time a Wednesday night Bible study I was going to be teaching at the church I was pastoring. And there was a lady who was a school teacher, actually. And she, when it came to a time that I asked them to, talk with their neighbor about something, share something with their neighbor, then, in a little pod, like 4 or 5 people get together, she left. And she told me later, she said, I'm never going to do if you're going to do small groups on Wednesday night like that, break it, I'm not coming back. It was like she was just so adamant that she did not want to do something that was going to help somebody else maybe, but
yeah. Well, what I do in that situation, I will say for the next 3 minutes. So I give a time limit. So a reflector and a thinker, they don't really want to share, but for 3 minutes they can endure it. And I also ask a question that has some kind of concrete response, like, who was your favorite Bible teacher? That way they don't have to dig back into their vault up here and come up with something. It's a fairly concrete response to that. There are times I ask open-ended questions that don't have necessarily a right or wrong answer, but those are usually for me nonsensical questions. For instance, it's not uncommon for me to ask, based on a banana split, how was your week last week? Are you the bananas? Are you the pineapple? Are you the cherry on top? Are you the whipped cream? What part of a banana split describes your week last week? So it's a nonsensical, open-ended question, but they do have to think metaphorically, and I know what I'm doing with them, but they don't know what I'm doing, and that's okay. I want them to have fun in that moment.
right.
I also am prone to ask reflective questions like, what color is anger? What does fear taste like? Those kinds of open-ended, reflective questions, but there are no right or wrong answers. Typically, if I'm teaching Bible content, I will ask a question that relates to the passage to get them into the lesson with me. But when I begin teaching the Bible content, I don't ask open-ended, I don't ask any questions, because my assumption is I'm the only one who's done the homework to teach. And so they will put up with some of my nonsense because they know that there is something coming beyond that. So that's how I work. And this grid helps me to do that too, because I know that feelers and doers typically are a little more in the top of their head, and reflectors and thinkers want to go a little bit deeper. But if I gave a 90-minute lecture on the theological and ontological movements within the 23rd Psalm, the feelers are tuning out as soon as they read the title, So when I ask, have you ever been to a petting zoo? What's your favorite animal in a petting zoo? A feeler's going to jump in. A reflector's going to go, this is stupid. Why are you asking me that question? And, I'll put up with that resistance too, because I know where we're going in the learning process.
Yeah.
Poor preparation leads to poor presentation.
Yeah.
So if I have done my homework to prepare, then I'm able to come into the classroom and move within these 4 areas pretty easily, even if there's resistance. Mm-hmm. And for that, for that lady in your church, I might have said, now I want everybody but Martha to turn to your neighbor. Because sometimes you just got to be a smart aleck when you lead, and I would be okay with that. And Martha, if Martha and I had a close relationship, she would be okay with it.
Yeah.
Because we would have talked about it and we would have joked about it, and so Martha would be one of those people that I would have fun with in the teaching learning process. Because the teacher needs to have fun too. It needs to be fun when I teach,
mm-hmm.
or else we're all going to be bored. So, yeah.
Great, thanks.
So my friend Leonard Sweet says that teaching should always be an epic event. E is for experiential. The P is for participatory. The I is for interactive, and the C is connected to life. So E, experiential, how can you get me to experience what you're saying? The P for participatory, how do I participate with you in learning this? The I is interactive. So how am I going to interact with others, not just participate with you, the teacher, but how am I going to interact with others? And then C is connected to life. So what? What's the so what of this lesson? And that takes us back to these learning styles. If it is experiential, everyone on this grid wants to experience something when they come to a Sunday school class. And P, participatory, they are looking to me as the teacher to lead the learning experience. So for the most part, they come with a readiness to participate with me. The interactive, how they interact with each other, Sweet says that interactive is also image rich. So whenever he teaches, he has an image that he presents, sometimes a tangible image that he presents, so that you see that image the whole time he's speaking. And at some point he will say, so for the next 2 minutes, talk with your neighbor about why I have a sheep on the teaching platform with me today. And oftentimes the learners have no idea why there's a sheep up there with him, or an ostrich egg. I've seen him a couple of times when he used an egg or an ostrich egg, and he comes in and puts the ostrich egg on the table in front of him, and he goes off teaching. You have no idea why that ostrich egg is up there, and you're wondering, what is that about? And then he'll stop and say, talk with your neighbor about why you think this ostrich egg is up here.
Hmm.
And you talk about it, and then he tells you what it is. And you go, of course, that's what it is. One thing about reflectors, they will take an image away with them, and they will reflect on that image for days. I think Sweet is brilliant when he says we interact because of the image. I think stories also do that. I think stories also are image rich and help us interact with each other. So I will also ask questions like, who was your girlfriend in the third grade? Or who was your boyfriend in the third grade? Many of us can't remember what we had for lunch yesterday, but we can remember our first love in the third grade, you know. So those images, while they're mental images, they're not tangible, either a projected image or a tangible image in the room. I think it's a fun thing to play with as I'm presenting each week. What is the image I want to portray? What is the truth of this lesson, and what's the image that I want to portray? And then the so what? How do I connect this to life? Well, the 23rd Psalm, if you have not walked through the valley of the shadow lately, you have just been sheltered at home this whole time. Lots of fear has arisen in our world in the last 6 months, and some media people have pronounced that fear and even ramped it up a bit and played on our fear in some ways. So we all know what fear feels like. If you've never felt fear before, you felt fear in the last 5 months. And if you've lost a friend or a family member due to COVID, you know what fear feels like. If you've had COVID around you, or if you yourself have had it, you know what fear feels like. And so the connection is, God says, no matter the fear, I'll be with you. I'm walking with you. Or the psalmist infers that God says that. So this grid right here really helps me focus my teaching on every learner in the room. And then Sweet reminds me that interactive and participatory are really important. And learning, I think learning best occurs as we interact with another person. And the reason I think that is because the promise of Scripture, when two or more gather together, I'll be with you. So that verse, that promise, is not just about getting through hard times or enduring life. I think it's also about learning. So when you and I gather together in the name of Christ, learning happens in ways we don't even realize or can't even anticipate. And we have always, all of us have experienced that aha moment in a class before, when something dawns on all of us and it's like, wow, where did that come from? And the only explanation is the Holy Spirit came down and visited with us. That teaching people the Bible is a holy privilege. And when we enter into it in that posture, God comes and sits with us, I believe.
So I got two questions. Is then curriculum, can we assume that it's got these styles in it, and then what do we do about, I like to teach as I'm taught?
I'm a big believer in curriculum. I'm a big believer in literature. Curriculum for me is the whole umbrella of learning. Everything. John Hendrix, another hero, says nothing never happens, and Maria Harris talks about curriculum as the explicit curriculum, the implicit curriculum, and the null curriculum, which is things we don't really talk about, but we're learning from anyway. So for me, curriculum is this all huge umbrella, and the literature enhances or lends information into the curriculum. Not all literature is aware of these learning styles. Not all literature is written for us to teach to these 4 learning styles. The teacher has to have a little bit of desire to get out of just regurgitating back to the class what they may have learned. And I say that teaching is more than telling. I challenge teachers to use 3 to 5 teaching methods for every teaching event. And if I use 3 teaching methods, I will generally hit all 4 learning styles. I also encourage teachers to only focus on one truth. What is the one thing that you want to teach in these next 30 minutes of Sunday school class, or however long your teaching time is? What's the one truth you want to talk about? And then talk about it in 2 or 3 different ways. So using the 23rd Psalm as our example today, we've been talking about fear. So what causes you fear? And what's your biggest fear? Might be a question I lead with. So public speaking is a big fear for most everyone on the planet. Spiders and snakes. I'm afraid of the dark, or heights, or flying, or whatever. We can identify with that question. What's a fear that you carry around? So I would ask that question and let people share that. And then I would say, today, we're going to see that even when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, God says, fear not. And then I might give a short lecture, but I also say, try to maintain your lectures to about 8 minutes at a time. So give a chunk of information and then do something that is experiential, participatory, interactive, or image rich, or connected to life. And then give another chunk of information and come back with another something interactive. And then give another chunk of information. About all you have time for is 3 chunks of information. So 5 to 8 minutes of lecture, and then stop and ask a question, invite discussion, some way to bring people in. And literature is not necessarily written for that. The teacher has to say, I'm not going to lecture on this the whole time. I can't lecture on this the whole time. And no one really wants to hear a lecture for the whole time. So the teacher has to take a little initiative, and maybe I would even say a little creative license with the literature piece. And not everyone wants to participate every Sunday, but over time, I'm going to trust that they will participate with me over time. And I like your lady friend that walked out. I walked out on small groups. I would I would just say to her, just if you don't want to participate, just sit quietly for 3 minutes and pray for me. And what will happen over time is people around her will turn to her and say, so Martha, what do you think? I'm not doing this. Oh, come on, what's your favorite color? It's not that earth-shaking a question. Okay, red. So if I can get her to participate one time without pain, maybe I can get her to participate another time. So my assumption is that I am the leader of the class and I am in control of what happens in that moment. And if it's not working well, I, as the leader, have the freedom to say, well, y'all didn't really like doing that. I'm not ever going to do that again in here. Or I have found that crayons and Play-Doh are wonderful tools for getting people to interact. You don't have to even make something or color something. Just there's something about holding a big chunky red crayon. Just the texture of it and the smell of it and the color of it on a white sheet of construction paper just takes my brain to so many different places. Or holding a little ball of Play-Doh in my hand and again, feeling it and smelling it and seeing it just shape as I roll it or whatever, just brings me back and takes me to so many different places. So I am hoping and praying that people will go with me on the learning journey. If they don't, it's only 3 minutes anyway. So I'm okay to stop and say, well, I didn't think that was going to work, but we tried it. And you know what happens? Somebody did enjoy it. Somebody did like it. And they will come up after class and say, I know everybody hated playing with Play-Doh, but I loved it. Could we do that again sometime? So I'm hoping that they go with me, and I'm the leader of the class. So it's up to me to entice them to go with me, encourage them to go with me. And so sometimes I will give them an option. So folks, I have a wonderful 30-minute lecture prepared on the theological and ontological meaning of the 23rd Psalm. Or we could play with Play-Doh for about 3 minutes. Which would you rather do? That's usually a no-brainer. And so I use humor a lot. I am a smart aleck sometimes in the classroom. But if I am a smart aleck, I'm the brunt of the joke, no one in the class. And so it's up to me to get people to join me in the learning experience. My job is to teach, and I teach to be heard. And I want to be heard because I have this tidbit of information I want to share with you.
I'd like to thank Bo Prosser for sharing with us his wisdom and insight and humor. A couple of insights for me. One is that there are these 4 learning styles, and so we need to be intentional in our teaching. It's very tempting and actually easier to focus only on the style that we are the most comfortable learning in, rather than exploring other learning styles. So we should give other prompts for those who learn in different ways. And the second takeaway for me is that literature is often not written in this way. It is not written intentionally to help us teach to the different learning styles. So we have to be intentional in creating and developing our lesson. And that may demand a little bit more creativity than just picking up the curriculum piece and using it. Thank you again for joining today's interview. We have weekly interviews on greatbibleteachers.com. So if you would, please sign up for our e-news. The e-news comes out on Tuesday to let you know about a blog article, and then on Thursdays to let you know about the day's interview. Thank you again for joining.